11 minutes to the hour. This is Paris Live PM. People trafficking is a term that's become synonymous with the migrant crisis. While illegal migration through the Balkans has declined, the number of migrants taking the central Mediterranean route, travelling north through Libya, is growing. Most West African migrants travel from Nigeria up through Niger and onto Libya. It's a path that's been well trodden over the centuries. The Sahel region is made up of ancient routes which have been used to transport goods, weapons, drugs, and also people. Its navigators are semi-nomadic tribes such as the Tuareg and the Tebu. Well, today's guest made the journey along one migrant route himself. He's the independent researcher Jérôme Tubiana, who specialises in the Eastern Sahel. Thanks for being on the program.
Thank you.
Now, you've published an article about your experience in the latest edition of the quarterly news magazine, Revue 21 or Revue 21. It's also been published in English, online, in Foreign Affairs. The French version, at least, is entitled Pirates of the Sahara. And it starts off telling us about the weekly migrant convoy of pickup trucks that left Agadez, that's the capital of northern Niger, and travelled to the desert oasis of Derkou. Now, this is the main stage on the road to Libya. From there, most migrants hope to cross the Mediterranean by boat and arrive in Europe. This is a very treacherous journey before you even get to Libya. You did it as part of your research. What did you encounter?
Well, initially, we wanted to reach the Libyan border and not necessarily just to work on the migration, but we found it was a very important issue, not the least because the people we were interviewing and working with, Tubu and Tuareg traders and smugglers, their communities are really living off the migration, and they worry that Europe is trying to prevent them to live of this activity, while in the past, and this is very important to understand, many of them were rebels, and when they signed peace agreements with the Niger government, and those were encouraged by the international community, including the European Union, at the time they were actually encouraged to become migrant smugglers, because there is not much else to do in the region. So it was completely legalized. They were even given driving licenses and permits to use cars, even including the cars they had stolen from the government, where became legal. Sure. And they were also authorized to take people on board from the main bus station in Agadez town, which is a major town, a major hub for migrants, and not only migrants in Niger.
Now, things are a little bit different these days. It's no longer legal. The voyage from Agadez to Derkou, it's one of the major routes travelling north up to Libya. It's particularly treacherous. It's 700 kilometres long. Now, in your piece, you're very descriptive in what the journey is like, not just for the migrants themselves, but also for these traders. Just how can you just describe for us the sands and the lack of water, and what is it like?
It's the Tenere Desert, so it's mostly sand and it's very flat. But you have to drive in the night or in the morning, because then the sand is cold and you can go quickly. Even with a small car, you don't necessarily need a 4-wheel drive. Some people bring brand new smuggled cars from Libya, which are not 4-wheel drives. Anyway. The main danger is actually for everyone, drivers and migrants, is bandits, because there are bandits.
Who are the bandits exactly? Are they Tuareg?
Well, some are Tuareg, but not only. And in recent years, some bandits operating in the area, as far as Mali, are actually Sudanese people, former Darfur rebels who were abandoned, who made peace with the government of Sudan, but did not get the integration that they were promised. And for this reason, they became very well seasoned adventurers in the Sahara. Mostly they are digging for gold, but some of them also became mercenaries in Libya. And some others even were involved in attacking convoys, including mostly drug traffickers' convoys, because it's where you can really make money. But anyway, it's interesting because in both cases, the migrant smugglers of Niger and the Darfurian bandits in the area, they have a very similar stories. They were rebels, they made peace, they negotiated a settlement, but then policies, including international policies, are making their life more complicated.
So, yeah, you have suggested in your piece that many smugglers don't fit this sort of stereotypical image of the human trafficker or the slave trader. So, yeah, tell us a bit more about the stories of their smugglers. I assume that you wouldn't necessarily agree with the line that some European governments would have us believe, that these people would go to great lengths to exploit refugees.
Well, they are living off it, and they are traders, and they mostly see themselves as transporters of anything that need to travel in the Sahara, and they know the roads and they know how to drive a car in the desert. So some of them may behave badly with migrants, but they may also, many of them may also kind of not really try to know what's happening to the migrants after they bring them to Libya, because the violence is really on migrants is really taking place in Libya, and not that much in the Sahara itself, but mostly on the coast. Then, and in cities, including in southern Libya. But then so they don't really want to know what's happening. But in fact, their interest is for the journey to go well. Their interest is for migrants to reach Europe, because if it happens badly, it will spoil the business. People will stop doing these travels.
So I suppose smuggling anything in Libya is good business these days, whether it's weapons or whether it's fuel or even people. Would you say that given the lawlessness and the disorganization of the government, that the traffickers themselves are becoming more organized?
Yes and no. I mean, there was already all kinds of smuggling and trafficking under Qaddafi, but then it was more or less controlled by Qaddafi. For migrants, there is a major difference, is that under Qaddafi, Libya was a relatively safe and welcoming place. It's not anymore, and that's because of Europe. And I mean,
he did a lot to stem the crisis, the migrant crisis. So.
Well, he was playing on it, and he was also using migrants as a bargaining chip with Europe. He was getting money from it, but in fact, it was also, Libya was also a major destination for not only economic migrants but even political refugees and even rebels from all over Africa who could find rehab bases or a safe haven or just a place to work for a few years and get significant income and send remittances to their own countries. So it's not anymore the case. And Europe is desperately trying to block migrants in Libya, including using possibly militia forces to do so, rather than to first try to reconstitute the Libyan state.
Right, so Libya wants perhaps a destination for sub-Saharan Africans. Now is just another dangerous place on the path to reaching Europe, their ultimate destination. But up until August last year, you mentioned that hundreds, up to 200 pickup trucks would leave Agadez. But since then, under pressure from Europe, there's been a crackdown by the authorities in Niger. What sort of effect has that crackdown had? Have numbers significantly reduced?
Well, actually, not really. It's just that people, smugglers and migrants became more discreet, but it doesn't seem the numbers really reduced. And it just made the crossing much more dangerous for both migrants and the drivers, because in the past they used to benefit from a military escort, a military convoy. Now, the real danger is for Niger, because Niger is the main hub for West African migrants. There is a real danger because, in fact, in the past there was some kind of fragile political balance between, on one side, the government benefiting from migrants and remittances, the military, because they were taking taxes, and the former Tuareg and Tubu rebels, because those were the drivers. Now this balance is threatened by Europe. And the real danger is that those people, in particular the Tubu and Tuareg drivers, they may turn to more dangerous activities, like becoming really drug traffickers or even terrorists. So there is some kind of contradiction in Europe's policies of, on one side, you want to do counterterrorism. On the other side, you want to block migrants.
Sure.
And for that, you risk creating more terrorism.
Okay, unfortunately, we've run out of time. We'll have to leave it there. Thanks very much, Jérôme Tubiana, for being on the program today.
Thank you.